1 Kings chapter 3 tonight, and the part that I want to focus in on is that God answers prayer, God grants this request. So I'm going to kind of narrow in onto that. The outline for, if you look at the first page there of your sheet, your handout, the outline in verses 1 through 4, you have Solomon begins to reign. And in these 4 verses, it's more than just kind of introductory. I think almost everything in there foreshadows something that's coming. So it's kind of an interesting few verses in verses 1 through 4. But then you get into the next 2 sections, which are kind of the main sections of the chapter. In verses 5 through 15, you have God coming to Solomon and saying, "Ask what you will, and I'll give it to you." So that's verses 5 through 15. And then verses 16 through 28 is an example of the wisdom of Solomon, because as you know, he asks for wisdom or understanding in order to rule the people, and God gives him that. And then in that last section of the book, you have an example of that he truly did have wisdom from God. So that's how the book ends out. Now, I want to focus in on verse 5 to begin with. And verse 5 is, of course, that appearance of God to Solomon. And he appears to him at Gibeon. What was Solomon doing at Gibeon? What was he doing there? Yeah, he was offering sacrifices. What did you say, Kevin?
I wasn't sleeping.
Sleeping? Oh, sleeping. Can't argue with that. All right, he was sleeping, but he was also sacrificing. And so he had gone to Gibeon to do this, and he did that there because there was the high place. And so as he is offering a whole lot of sacrifices during the night, God appears to him and says, "Ask, what shall I give you?" Now, this is pretty amazing. I don't know about you. Every time I read this, it's like, "Lord, why don't you appear to me and, give me one thing, to ask for." Is anybody else like that, or is that just me? Anybody else? Just me, right? Colin's pointing at me. All right, I'm not the only one. Okay, well, that makes me feel a little better, because it's kind of embarrassing how this all kind of works itself out in the end. But for now, that'd be an amazing thing if the Lord appeared and said, what do you want? I'll give it to you. So that's pretty amazing. However, when we consider what prayer is all about, we're really not coming to anything very special on the part of God coming to Solomon and making this request of him. Now, it's interesting because in the Old Testament, you don't have this engagement with prayer, not like you do in the New Testament. Now, don't get me wrong, it is clearly there. And if you read through the Psalms, almost every psalm is a plea or a cry to the Lord to hear and to answer. And so it's there and it's present, but there's kind of a shift that comes from the Old Testament to the New Testament. And God coming to Solomon here is unique in that Solomon has been established as what over Israel? As king. And so this is almost like God is coming with a gift to the new king. Now, after all, Solomon is the king that God said would be the next king after David. And we already saw how there was this turmoil and this trouble in the family of David when he was getting ready to pass away at who would be the successor. And so it wasn't an easy transition. But God had picked Solomon. God had installed him as king. And now he's coming to him and asking him, "What can I give to you?" And Solomon, of course, comes up with the right answer, right? Give me wisdom. And it's really a good thing for Solomon to land onto this. He recognizes who he is and his position, and he also recognizes his own deficiencies. So he comes before God and saying, I'm young, there's all these people, I don't know what I'm doing, and so I ask for wisdom and understanding to rule your people. So it's really a selfless kind of request that he's making of God. And God is really pleased with his response. And so not only does he give Solomon wisdom, but he gives Solomon all of the things that he didn't ask for as well, the riches and the long life and peace from his enemies, and all of those things are given to Solomon. And really, during the reign of Solomon, and here I'm kind of getting ahead, during the reign of Solomon, you're going to have the kingdom of Israel expanding to the greatest extent that it has ever reached. After King Solomon, things are going to get worse. So Solomon is kind of the heyday for the nation of Israel. Their borders are to the furthest extent that they've ever enjoyed. The prosperity of the economy and the building projects and all of that is just greatest during the period of Solomon. There's going to be one other king a little bit later who is going to reign a long time and do a lot of good for the nation of Israel, but not as great as Solomon. So God is pleased with him, with this the request that he makes, and he grants him the answer. Now, the connection we're making is towards us in the New Testament. What bearing does this have, if anything, upon us in the New Testament? And the first thing is that as Christians, we are more than just like the people. We are the people of the kingdom, but we're more than that as believers in Christ. We are one with Christ, and Christ has put upon us this special designation of uniqueness and of service and of position. He has granted to us. So there's one verse I want to look at. There's a couple we can turn to, but one kind of brings in several of these ideas, and it's 1 Peter chapter 2. So if we'll turn to 1 Peter chapter 2. First Peter chapter 2, and we want to read verses 9 and 10. First Peter 2, 9 and 10. Anybody want to read that? Ben?
But you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for his own possession, that you may proclaim the excellencies of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. Once you were not a people, but now you are God's people. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy.
Okay. Verse 10 is kind of a reflection back on the book of Hosea, so I don't know if you remember that, but he has made us as his people, as believers, his people here on this earth. And we are, you didn't have the word ambassadors. Oh, that was another verse actually. But a chosen people, a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, his own special people. So this is who we are in Christ. We stand out. We are unique in the rest of the world, from the rest of the world. And along those lines, God, in a sense, comes to us and offers basically the same thing he offers Solomon. Now, it doesn't come directly to us per se in that, we haven't had a dream where God has said, Raymond, what would you like? I'll give it to you, whatever you ask. I haven't had a dream like that, but really, I don't need a dream like that because of the promises that the Bible makes. So if you turn to page 27 in the handout, I listed a number of verses here where God promises to answer our prayers. And so let me take a few moments to read this, and I'm going to take a few moments to go through this because this is so important for us to grasp and to have faith in as it connects to our prayer life. So just kind of take this list to heart, if you will, and try to apply it or make it a part of your life. So we start in why don't we, rather than me just reading all of them, let's have volunteers to read each one. So get ready to volunteer to read, okay? Matthew 7, 7 and 8. Matthew 7, 7 and 8. Philip?
Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and it will be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives, and he who seeks finds, and to him who knocks it will be opened.
Thank you. Mark 11:24. Kevin?
Therefore I say to you, whatever things you ask when you pray, believe that you receive them, and you will have them.
Luke 11:9. Ben?
So I say to you, ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and it will be opened to you.
John 15:7, Andrew?
If you abide in me and my words abide in you, you will ask what you desire, and it shall be done to you.
John 15:16, Tom?
If you do not choose me, but I choose you and appointed you that you should go and bear fruit, that your fruit should remain. Whatever you ask the Father in my name, he will give to you.
John 16:23 and 24, Colin?
And in that day you ask me nothing, most assuredly, I say to you, whatever you ask the Father in my name, he will give you. Until now you have asked nothing in my name. Ask and you will receive, that your joy may be full.
1 John 3:22. Ben?
And whatever we ask, we receive from him, because we keep his commandments and do those things that are pleasing in his sight.
1 John chapter 5, verse 14 and 15 says, Now this is the confidence that we have in him. If we ask anything according to his will, he hears us. And if we know that he hears us, whatever we ask, we know that we have the petitions that we have asked of him. Now, these are not all of the verses. There are others, and there's some more in here, but they're connected to other things. But this is not an isolated promise that God makes. It is repeated several times. And especially when it comes to the Gospel of John. For some reason, the Gospel of John has numerous places. And if you want to include John as John the Apostle as the author, you can include 1 John in that and you get even more. And so his one of his focuses is on this promise that God will give us the things that we ask for. Now, some of the verses are conditional, so we have to remember that and take that into account, but not all of them are. And so we have this offer this invitation, I should say, on the part of God, who invites us to ask of him, and through prayer, of course, to make these requests, and to have that we should have some faith that he is going to be true to what he has promised, namely that he will answer our prayers. Now, if you look on the page 28 here, and by the way, even wisdom is included in this. James chapter 1, verses 5 and 6 says, if any of you lacks wisdom, isn't that what Solomon requested? I mean, here specifically, it is being offered to the believer. If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all liberally or generously and without reproach, and it will be given to him. But let him ask in faith with no doubting, for he who doubts is like a wave of the sea driven and tossed by the wind. So it's conditional on our faith. We should ask with faith, but it's being offered to us as believers. If we need wisdom, we can ask for wisdom, and he will give it to us generously, liberally, and without reproach. So quite an amazing thing here. Now, there's another passage in John that I want to focus on, and this is under the connected to Christ part in your handout. And it's from John chapter 17, verses 20 through 23. And it says this, I do not pray for these alone, Jesus is praying here, but also for those who will believe in me through their word, that they all may be one, as you, Father, are in me and I in you, that they also may be one in us, that the world may believe that you sent me, and the glory which you gave me I have given them, that they may be one just as we are one. I in them, and you in me, that they may be made perfect in one, and that the world may know that you have sent me and have loved them as you have loved me. So the prayer here is that God would grant that he would make us one. Now, if you look at the little diagram there, you have the Father one with Christ, Christ one with the Father, Christ one with us, we are one with Christ, and then us with the one directional, if you will, towards the world. That our oneness has an impact on the world. Now, put that together with John 14, 13, and 14, which is on page 28 towards the bottom there, and you'll see the glory aspect coming in again. So it says in John 14, 13, whatever you ask in my name, that I will do, that the Father may be glorified in the Son. If you ask anything in my name, I will do it. So what we have is this. You have this relationship, the Father and Christ and us, impacting the world, and this promise that if we ask, if we ask in his name, he will do it. So here we are, we're living in this world, and we make an impact in this world because of our oneness with Christ. And our oneness with Christ brings to us the invitation to ask, and we will get for the glory of God, for the glory of Christ. And so here it is. We live in this world, and we are to make our requests known. And God has promised to answer, which will result in an impact in the world. It will also result in Christ being glorified because we have asked in his name, and that will result in the glory of God. So what we have here then is God being most glorified in the answering of our prayers. And so, it's almost like he wants to do this because the more we walk in this, the greater the glory goes unto the Father. So God is most glorified by answering all our prayers. So let's be about praying, right? Let's be about praying. He has made these great promises. It's greater than Solomon, than the one, it's greater than I'll do one thing for you if you, what do you want? I'll do that thing for you. It's greater than that because it's open-ended. We can keep on asking, he will keep on doing, and he will keep on being glorified. So, all right, any questions on anything in the chapter?
So, do you think the sacrifices they were making at the high places are sacrifices to God?
I think Solomon was, but it's misguided. But you can read that in the first part there. The tabernacle was there in Jerusalem, but he didn't go there. And it says at the beginning that they didn't sacrifice there because there was no temple yet. It says that in verse 2. So I think they were misguided there. And you'll notice, this is how it puts it in the English anyways. Solomon loved the Lord, verse 3, walking in the statutes of his father David, except that he sacrificed. So I don't think it was the best choice for them.
But it doesn't seem, at least at this point, it doesn't seem like it's idolatry per se.
Yeah, he's not being chastised for that. As a matter of fact, God does appear to him at Gibeon to make this request for him. So I think it's one of those things that you'll find in the Kings where it says, so-and-so king walked in the ways of the Lord, except, very similar to this, except that he offered at the high places. But the overall comment is a commendation for the king, even though they weren't, perfect in the way that they observed, followed the Lord. So it says he loved the Lord, and I think he was literally sacrificing to the Lord there at Gibeon.
Just not in the way of God.
Just not in the way. And that could, if we take some other examples, that could really go and end badly for the person. But God is gracious a lot of times. And so in this particular case, he allows this
essentially blesses.
That's right. But the interesting thing is that after the dream, Solomon goes back to Jerusalem and offers sacrifices there. And so to me, I suggest that Solomon has this, not just Solomon, but the people, they have this kind of high view of the appearance of things. Because he's going to go into this lavish building project. His palace is lavish and the temple is lavish. And I think that the people are in this mindset, Gibeon was a nice place. So let's go there and sacrifice to the Lord because, we don't want to go to this tent over here. That's just kind of, So I suggest that maybe that's the reason why they're doing that. But because they didn't understand that the presence of the Lord is what mattered, not the appearance of the place. And so once Solomon understands this, after his little dream with God, then he goes back to where he should have started and offered the sacrifice there. So I think the whole thing is, we just see God's grace and mercy extended to Solomon here. Like I said, it could have gone badly for him because they were doing it wrong. But thankfully God is merciful to us when we don't do it right. I mean, even for us.